I love movies where nothing really happens. By nothing, I mean nothing so clear and explicit that drives the story and follows a traditional narrative structure with a clear-cut conflict, climax, and resolution. In terms of recent releases, I'm thinking of Past Lives, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, or Aftersun. And don't get me wrong, virtually no story is devoid of traditional narrative elements entirely, but in the case of these films, they just happen to be very subtle and buried between the lines. Depending on what you like to watch movies for, you might find them hollow and pointless, especially if entertainment is key to your appreciation of a film. If the plot is not your priority though, then there is so much you can take away from movies where nothing really happens. I would even argue that there is an unmatched power in a film that can get across compelling messages and evoke overwhelming emotion with little to no major plot elements. Managing to generate any remotely powerful reaction from minimal narratives is a talent that is not given to anyone, and that is why such movies usually end up gaining critical acclaim. When the plot isn't at the center of a film, that doesn't mean it's about nothing. It just means that it prioritizes elements that deserve more of your attention. And so for these elements to properly breathe and shine, the plot needs to take a backseat. There could be many things an artist may prefer to highlight over the plot, and today we're going over the most outstanding of these things. For starters, the absence of a distinctive plot can be read as a statement on filmmaking in and of itself, on film structure, style, and aesthetics. Some of the earliest movies that we can describe as movies about nothing were released during the French New Wave, which was a significant cinematic movement that emerged in the 1950s and represented a major departure from traditional French cinema, as it served as a response to the highly structured and formulaic conventions of the French film industry at the time. Filmmakers from this movement, like François Truffaut or Jean-Luc Godard, embraced a sense of realism and authenticity. They often used natural lighting, location shooting, handheld cameras, and non-professional actors to create a documentary-like aesthetic. The narratives in those movies tended to be dialogue-driven, and it wasn't uncommon for them to be non-linear or at some point attempt to break the fourth wall, all in their quest to subvert filmmaking norms. Their influence on cinema was everlasting, as it impacted well-established filmmakers that we know today like Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, or Wes Anderson, who drew inspiration from their distinctive styles and approaches. When the plot takes a backseat in the movie, another element that gets more room to be explored is theme. A lot of the movies where nothing really happens want to bring your attention to a social issue they are trying to represent. These films use the subtlety of their narratives, character interactions, and everyday situations to shed light on significant societal plights. To go back a little in history again, we can find that Italian Neorealism supports this point very well, since it's another cinematic movement that emerged in Italy after the Second World War, characterized by stories revolving around the poor and the working class, and addressing the difficult economic and social conditions Italians live through daily, like poverty, oppression, injustice, and desperation. To give justice to these issues, filmmakers relied on narratives that capture in detail the mundane and seemingly boring life of working class individuals. They were shot almost exclusively on location in rundown cities and rural areas, and often featuring non-professional actors, just like the French New Wave. It plays a role in inspiring that movement, and so gets indirect credit for the influence it has on cinema up to this day. In some films, nothing remarkable happens within the movies themselves in the purpose of giving you, the viewer, room to contemplate and meditate on the subjects they bring to light, mainly those about existence, the meaning of our lives, and the human condition. Films with this purpose can be found anywhere and at any time, but if we are to pin a specific term on them, slow cinema would be the closest in accuracy. Also known as contemplative cinema, slow cinema is a style or movement that appeared roughly in the late 60s to 70s with Russian director Andrei Tarkovsky. It's characterized by its deliberate pacing, long takes, and contemplative style. To give an example of slow cinema, you can refer to its foundational film, John Dielman, 23 Quai de Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles. Directed by Chantal Akerman, this film sits right now at the top of Sight and Sound list of the greatest films of all time, simply for closely following and observing the mundane life and daily routines of a housewife life over the course of 3 days, with a focus on slow, methodical shots and minimal dialogue. In that, slow cinema becomes the closest style to what we know as movies where nothing really happens. Of course, there are more than just these cinematic movements that live up to this description, and certainly not every movie has to subscribe to any of them to be properly defined within this genre. But they do give us an idea on what we can take away from movies that are this slow and narratively minimal. When it comes to Aftersun, for instance, the 2022 directorial debut of Charlotte Wells, following a father and his daughter as they go on this vacation to Turkey, it's reminiscent of slow cinema's tendency to compel you to sit with long still shots and bits of seemingly insignificant dialogues in the purpose of making you contemplate about the role that perspective plays in how we shape and perceive our relationships. As the film is told from the point of view of the daughter revisiting that one memory of the vacation, after she grows up and so much is revealed to her since then. The movie can feel too simple and purposeless until you start picking up its subtle hints to an event that is so crucial that it changes your whole superficial perception of it in the same way that it does for the daughter. On the same note of memory and nostalgia, the 2014 movie Boyhood is a coming-of-age story where, again, nothing significant happens in the life of a boy who we get to see growing up. And so the only reaction it can get from you is nostalgia and an urge to contemplate on memories and the passage of time. But Boyhood also lives up to the notion of films about nothing bringing attention to the making of the movie itself, as it stands out in that it was shot in real time over the span of 12 years, where you get to see the real actors playing the characters literally grow up in real time as the movie goes. To relate all of this to even more recent releases, we take the example of Past Lives that came out this year. It follows the story of two childhood lovers who get separated after one of them immigrates from Korea to the US. All that we see throughout the movie is occasional encounters and conversations that take place in different stages of their lives later on. Again, the movie sacrifices its plot and sometimes even its dialogue to let the feelings and emotions of the characters breathe and communicate to you the intricacies of their relationships, and so compel you to reflect on your own. Interestingly, one of the only titles the director of this movie, Celine Song, admitted to take inspiration from is My Dinner with Andre, an even crazier example of movies where nothing happens, as it follows this one single conversation between two old friends over the dinner table. Again, it's a movie that gets its value from your ability to contemplate on the philosophical and existential questions that these two friends evoke in their conversation. Another favorite movie of mine where nothing really happens is the 2016 movie Paterson, which follows the daily life of this bus driver who's so passionate about writing poetry, as well as his wife who dreams of becoming a country singer and starting a cupcake business. This movie is compelling through its superb performances that give justice to the unique dynamic of the couple, but more importantly, it lives up to the neorealist trend of capturing the simple lives of ordinary lower-class individuals who have economical obstacles that stand in the way of them achieving their dreams, yet manage to find that simple and quiet beauty in art. And for a movie that goes all the way for a depiction of social class struggle, I think The Florida Project would serve as a great example. It's a 2017 film that follows the story of this 6-year-old girl who lives with her unemployed single mother in a budget motel. Nothing major happens in this movie except towards the very end, and for a good portion of it, you just follow the silly summer adventures of this little girl and her friends just playing around. But it's from the raw depiction in the background of the social reality that the movie draws its value. The tragedy that it alludes to is much louder than the vibrant colors it paints to give itself a distinctive aesthetic, or the numerous cheerful and silly moments that bring back childhood memories. The contrast it creates is as violent as the contrast between these motels sheltering the homeless and the Disney theme park that is a few miles away, and which was also known as the Florida Project. So these were some of my favorite slow movies. Let me know in the comments some of your favorite slow movies as well. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you like the content here. Now I've got to say goodbye and see you in another video.